So good morning everyone and welcome to our next edition of Learnable Live Online. My name is Lisa McGonigal and today's webinar will show you how to give your ADAPT learning the wow factor. I'm delighted to see so many of you joining us online. Today we have Ben from Cambridgeshire Fire and Rescue. Welcome Ben. We have Leah from Warwickshire. We have Sam tuning in the whole way from Beijing in China, and we have Judith from Co-Ownership. So thank you to everyone. This has been one of our most popular webinars to date, so hopefully we'll be able to meet and exceed delegates' expectations for this morning. So joining me today are graphic design gurus Paul Crumlish and Mary Faughnan, and Head of Content Lindsey Coode, who are primed to share their hints and tips on how you can create sensational, adapt learning content. So before we kick off, I just want to make sure that everyone on the call can hear us okay. So you'll see a small orange hand beside your name. If you could just raise that to let us know that the audio is working. Great stuff. Thank you, Betty. Thanks, Bob. Wonderful. Thank you. So the session should last approximately 45 minutes, and there will be an opportunity for you to interact with us throughout by way of polls, chats and questions. So down the right hand side of your control panel, you'll see a tab about questions. Just pop your questions in there, and Lindsey, Paul and Mary will do their best to answer as many questions as we can live on today's session. So I just want to kick off to get a feel for the audience in terms of what their experience is about working with images and e-learning. So what we're asking here is, how do you feel about working with images in e-learning? Are you a newbie? You feel as if you're making medium progress, or that you're pretty confident but always looking for tips and advice? So we'll give that another 5 or 10 seconds. Interesting results coming in here. Okay. So we'll just show what people are saying. So what we have is a fifth of our delegates today class themselves as a newbie when it comes to working with images and e-learning. Almost half are making medium progress, and we have just under a third feel that they're pretty confident but always looking for advice. Would you have any comments to make on that, Lindsey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think basically just everyone's in the right place. I think images is probably one of the main things that moving from our old authoring tool and also from many of the other kind of authoring tools that are out there. It's really quite different in how you work with the images and how you use them to fill the canvas. So I think kind of what Paul and Mary are going to go through today will be really useful regardless of how experienced you are. And particularly for people working in ADAPT, basically. So
absolutely,
all good.
I agree. All good, all good. So I'm actually just going to pop you over to Lindsey to introduce the concept of ADAPT and go from there. So that should be you, Lindsey.
Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can see my screen now. Thank you, Lisa, for the introductions, and welcome to everyone to this webinar. So I'm sure many of you by now know a little bit about ADAPT, but what I want to do just before we get started on looking at the images is just kind of give you a quick run through and hopefully kind of cover a little bit of the jargon. Although we very much try to avoid using it, there will be words that you'll hear which, if you're not that familiar with ADAPT, may not be kind of that common to you. So we've got here that the builder plus the framework equals content. ADAPT is obviously a responsive framework. That's how we tend to refer to it. What that means in very simple terms is that what happens at the back end, there's one version of that, and the only thing that changes depending on the device you're using is it checks what screen size you've got, and then it reconfigures the content to fit on that screen size. It doesn't just shrink it down as some other authoring tools do. It actually moves things around. It makes sure that the text is still at a sensible size, even if it's being displayed on a mobile phone. And that's what we see as really the core to kind of the value that ADAPT brings to your learners. So it means that wherever they are, whatever device they have to hand, that they can use that basically. So if we just continue on, the framework is we call it the technology that makes the magic happen. You don't really need to know anything about it. It's all the scary looking code that's in the background. So that's the framework. It's what it is the builder is the bit that you see. So this is where you take your components, you build your pages, you build your module, you put your graphics into the builder and all that kind of thing. So that's some of the stuff that we'll be talking about today. And then when you put those two together, what you come out with at the other end is the content. And we've got here, it's the Hopefully Gorgeous e-learning. As my team are the content development team, so we focus on the instructional design. We also do a lot of the building in the builder. We are very aware that without our very talented graphics team, we would find it much more difficult to make our adapt courses look as amazing as they do. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. Just quickly before I pass over to Paul and Mary, I just wanted to kind of let you see some of these stats about how we're getting on with Adapt. For those of you that are Learning Pool customers, you'll be aware that we have a large catalogue of modules that we're converting from our old authoring tool to Adapt. We have about 400 plus modules now ready to go. We're adding kind of new ones all the time. We've also got 300 plus organizations using the Adapt Builder, which is great. And actually, I think people are finding it's pretty easy to pick up and get going. 4 hours to get up to speed in our academy, that's really key, I think, to the reason that so many organizations are able to use it. So you can go online onto academy.learningpool.com, work through some e-learning and be ready to go and ready to get started. There's lots of different components available, and we are working on more currently. Hopefully we'll be able to give you more detail on those soon. But what we're doing is we're listening to our customers and just finding out what we need. Some of the ideas come from my team, from the content team, but as I said, we also listen to you and what you think would make really good additions. So on that note, we are going to continue, and I will hand over to Paul and Mary, who are going to talk to you about how to make your Adapt modules look as good as they can, really. So thank you, everyone.
That's great, Lindsey. Thank you very much for that comprehensive introduction. Just pass you over to Paul now.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Paul Crumlish. I'm one of the designers at Learning Pool, and I'm here with Mary Faughnan today, and we're going to take you through basically some of the steps, or at least some tips that we have around, sourcing images for courses or for your Adapt courses. Where you actually find those images, and either from free sources or other sources. Then what you should do with them after that, resizing them. Getting the right size of images that you need to use for Adapt courses, and actually resizing them to use them for that. Another important step after that is actually optimizing your images for the web, which just means that that whenever you've got your image at the right resolution in terms of pixel size, actually then compressing it so that the file size is small enough so that it downloads quicker to your users and they have a better experience. Then we'll move on to some, little demo in the Adapt Builder itself, and we'll show you how we would customize the page using the theme customizations to sort of give it a bit more life and make it a bit more engaging for the users. After that, Mary's going to take over, and she is going to take you through a course that she has built with a lot of the sort of the best practices in mind that she usually sort of keeps. Looking at particular components and what type of images you use for those, choosing your backgrounds, and then some just general design tips that you would keep in mind when you're actually working with Adapt. So sort of to begin with, the first thing obviously is sort of sourcing images, and there's a few, there's a lot of places out there that you can do this. Or a couple of the best places that you can find is Pixlr.com and Unsplash.com. Now these are both free resource sites, and they both work under the Creative Commons 0, which, if anybody knows anything about licenses, they're always very complicated. So if you're looking for free images that you can actually use for anything, for your, for personal or corporate use, you should always be looking for sites to provide images under the Creative Commons 0. And both Pixels and Unsplash both do that. Everything you see on there is totally free to use in whatever way you see fit. Other options for sourcing imagery is obviously you have the paid option as well. So if you do have a bit of a budget, you can use sites like Shutterstock or iStock. At Learning Pool we use Shutterstock. iStock is basically the same thing, and often you see similar images on both of the sites. Personally, for us, we just find that maybe there's a little bit of a better selection in Shutterstock and maybe better value possible. So whenever we actually looked in places like Shutterstock or looked in places like Unsplash or Pixels and found the images that we need, we then have to think about, okay, so how are we going to use these within the courses themselves? And there's a few different types of particular image types that we use per course. So I'm just going to take you through a few of those now. So one of the main ones that we always use is a background image for the menu itself. So this is sort of the top half of a menu page, and we often use an image in the background here. And this, again, this has been in theme customization, and I'll show you that later. But the images that we use here, we have a kind of a standard size that we use. Now, these sizes aren't necessarily set in stone. You can always be a little bit flexible around these, but these are the sizes that we find work best for our for Adaptive at the minute and the courses that we produce. So our menu images are generally 2,000 pixels wide and 800 pixels high, and that usually gives you enough space to kind of fill any sort of screen width that somebody might be viewing on, and then enough height to kind of fill the top half of that menu area. The other type of images that we use are in the background of the pages themselves. So this would be a page that's beyond the menu itself. And again, these are the background images are very similar to the menu image in that they fill the full space of the images in the background, or sorry, the screen in the background. And they're also 2,000 pixels wide. And in this case, we have 1,400 pixels tall. Now the reason we have these are taller is that you will often, these will need to be displayed from basically the top to the bottom of the screen, and you want to have enough sort of pixel height for that to accommodate for that. Again, this is not totally set in stone, but just these are the sizes that we find most useful. Sort of moving beyond background images, we then have images that are for content, possibly within a narrative or within a hot graphic in this case. And these images generally do always sit right in line with the content of the rest of the course. These images probably are designed more for the user to focus on, whereas, say, for example, the background menu image or the background page image are more about giving a little bit of context to the course, but not necessarily something that the user needs to focus on entirely. So for these types of content images, we have two different types. We have a full width image, which you see here, and the size that we generally use for that is 1,224 pixels wide, which matches essentially the width of the articles that are set up in the builder, and then 400 pixels high. Now, the width of those, we would generally stick with 1,024. The height can vary. Now, that really depends on what your need is. For the most cases, we try to stay around 400 pixels because even though scrolling isn't really an issue in Adapt, you still don't really want to take up, you don't really want to have very, very tall images unless there's a good reason for it. Say, for example, if you wanted to have a tall infographic or something that needed, the person just kind of scroll over and sort of digest that a bit on a taller graphic, that's fine. But as I say, we kind of try to keep those around 400 high. The last type of graphic that we use is a half-width graphic. So this is essentially half the width of the article. That's whenever you've got a component that's sitting to your left or right, and the width of that is 512 pixels by 400 high. Again, 512 is exactly half of the article, but the 400 again can vary depending on your needs. But we found that around that height in general, we kind of stick with that, and it's usually a pretty good size. So sort of moving on from that, obviously, if that's sort of the different sizes that we generally tend to stick to. So it's only really 4 different image types, for most of our courses, unless there's some other specific requirement. But really, the sort of the steps that we take beyond that for each of those images is kind of the same. So I'm just going to switch over to the web here. I'm just going to show you basically how you would take an image that you might have sourced from Shutterstock or Pixlr or some other source, resize it, and then optimize it, and then use it within the builder. What I'm going to use is this little piece of software called Pixlr. This is a free piece of software, so and it's online, so all you really need is a connection to the internet, and you can see the URL at the top here. This is basically like a very light version of Photoshop, and it'll give us some of the useful tools that we have in Photoshop that maybe not everybody has access to, but it'll allow you to kind of do some of the essentials that you need to do with any images that you want to use in Adapt. So I'm just going to take you through some steps here. So what we're going to do to begin with is we're going to create an image that we want to use in background of a menu page. So the first thing we need to do is we'll hit new image, and then we'll name our menu image here. We'll just call it menu EG. And then there's presets here, but we'll just ignore the presets and we'll move straight on to setting a custom width and height. And we're going to make this 2000 width, and we're going to make it 800 height. This is what I mentioned before with the actual sizes of the background menu image that we used. So we're going to press OK on this. So we're presented with this canvas, and this is essentially the final size of the image that we are trying to create. So this is our menu background image, although with the manipulator obviously there's a little detail. But you can see that the width of it is 2000 pixels by 800 tall. I've actually zoomed it out quite a bit here so you can see it all on the screen at once. So the next step is to then take this canvas and then essentially drop an image that we want to use as our background menu on top of that. So I've downloaded an image previously from Shutterstock that I'm going to open here. This will just take a little second. So you can see that we have this image that, as I say, is from Shutterstock. And if you just look at the actual size of this image here at the bottom, you can see that this is 4,000 pixels by 2,667 pixels high. Now that's, at least in width, is double the size of our menu background image that we're trying to create. So we need to get this image into this area and then resize it so that we can then save it and use it as our final background image. So a really simple way to do that is once we have this window here active, we want to move up to the Move tool here in the toolbox. Make sure that's active. Then you'll see here, you'll have a little layers panel. And what we want to do is just, as we move over the layer here, you can see that turns a little hand tool. We can actually just drag that straight into our new menu background canvas. And that's our kind of our first step. So it's kind of, most of the way there already. We have a few things yet to do, but that's pretty much it's probably the hardest step. So this is our original Shutterstock image. We don't need that anymore, so let's close that. And then I'm just going to resize this window here so I can get a bit of a better view. And I'm going to zoom out on this. But let me take it to say 15%. Now, so you can see that our image has been placed here. But if I move this around, again, I've just got the little move tool selected, and I can grab that and move it. You can see that we can't see the full area of the image. So what we want to do is we want to resize this image to fit the canvas that it's sitting on. And to do that, with that image selected in the layers panel, we want to move up to Edit, and we're going to go to Free Transform. So what Free Transform does is it gives us this little, essentially a little frame around the image itself that allows us to resize it. So we can grab the corners of the frame and scale in the image and adjust it. So you can scale it and you can move it. So it takes a little bit, to move it around and get it right. So it's not going to all happen at once. So you move it and scale it and move it and scale it until you get something that you're happy with. And just a small note, whenever you are scaling it, if you grab the corner, you should also hold down your Shift button on your keyboard, what that does is that constrains the scale. If you don't hold on your Shift button, you will get something like this where you're getting the images stretching and skewing in different proportions that we probably don't want. So holding down Shift, as I am now, you can see that I'm scaling that uniformly. So that gives us more or less what we want in terms of the image filling the screen but showing all the detail we want. And I press Return, and that's our image resized and in the canvas. I'll just bring that up. Let's see this size again so we can see that all in the image. So that's essentially all you really need to do. So this is for a background image. As I say, this is 2,000 pixels by 800 tall. If this was a content image, this would be, you would do this exactly the same steps for, say, for example, 512 wide by 400 tall, or it might be a full width graphic. The steps are exactly the same. It's really just the size of the canvas that you set at the start that determines the size of the end image. So the final step on this is that we want to save this image And we'll just go File, Save. And the name is already set. We set that at the beginning. In this case, we're going to use JPEG. And then we also want to just take a little look at the quality setting on this. So whenever you look at the quality, it's always a balance between file size and obviously the final image quality. And if you look down here, you can see that the image that we're using here, at the minute, if we save it at 80%, will be about 464 kilobytes, which is about half a megabyte, which is quite big for an image as a background image. So we want to try and get this down at least under 300 kilobytes, but less if we can. So I'm going to take this down to 50%. And you can see that takes us down to about 258, which is good, but could probably still be a bit better. So I'm going to take it maybe down to 40, see how that goes. Sorry, not 440. And that's 223, which is a lot better. So you can push this further down the quality scale if you like, but once you upload this to that, you'll start to see, is it losing too much quality? So you may have pushed it too far. So it's always, as I say, it's always a bit of a trade-off. So try this out at different quality settings, see what you're happy with the actual final image. So that's the image saved. And I'm going to just save it here to my local machine. And that's kind of, that's the steps we take pretty much for every image that we source from, say, Shutterstock or something similar before we take it into the builder. So if we move over to the builder, and I have a course here, which is just a short course, and I just want to quickly sort of just preview this course, which should be previewed here. Now, so this is, as I say, probably a similar course that you've all seen before. It has very little style or graphics, and at the minute, this is the menu page itself. You can see that we have no background image on that. And what we're going to do is actually add in the background image that we've just created. So if I move back to the builder, with the theme customization, and if I scroll down to the menu top background image, and I'm going to select an asset, and we are going to upload a new asset, and we're going to browse to the same asset we just created, which is our menu PG, and I'm going to open that. So the next thing you want to do is, it's a kind of an important step that maybe a lot of people miss out on, is that adding in asset description and asset tags. Usually what we do for that is, for the asset description, we might, keep in the actual, I'm just going to copy this, keep the name itself in the asset description, but also add in the name of the course that you're creating, what's in theme. And then also we're going to create some tags at the bottom, so this will help you whenever you're searching for the images again at a later date. If you maybe a few weeks or months down the road, you're trying to find that same image again. So we're going to add a few tags that will help you find that. So we're going to add on the tags menu PG, we'll press return. You'll see that's created that as a separate tag. I'm also going to add on the tag buttons. So there's some buttons in the background of the image, and the tag scissors. So that basically, if we sit there to search again for this image in a few months' time, probably if we search for the word scissors or buttons or in the BG, we'll hopefully get this a lot quicker than being able to trawl through all the previous uploads. So that's our image added. And I'm going to press done. And you can see now it's been added into the customization. And I'm going to preview this. Preview. So just take a second to preview. Okay, and so we'll move over to the course. You can see now that the background image is dropped in. So you'll see that this image is originally was quite a large image, and still takes up a lot of the screen. But now we've optimized it, we've resized it, and it's perfectly usable at any sort of resolution without being too heavy on anybody's system or taking a long time to download. And you should get some nice results with this. So you just take a bit of care about the image that you choose. So moving on from that, I'm going to look a little bit at some of the ways that you can actually customize the pages themselves. So here we have a page that we have styled for this particular course. And you can see as I move down through the page here, you can see that we have a background image in the page itself. We're also at points where we're hiding that background image with a default color in the background. And then as I move further down the page, you can see that we actually have a little, almost like a little effect here, which is essentially just, we have, you know, the background image. We have another version of the background image with these dots applied to it. And this is kind of, you know, it's very simple to do actually, but it's almost kind of just faking this little effect that there's little dots here across the image. Important to note as well that there's a blank space above and below here. That when I show you in the builder in a second, you'll see that that's actually created with blank articles. So what I'm going to do is I have another page which is essentially the same content, but there's no theming on it at all. And I'm going to take you through the steps that we use to turn this page into something more interesting to look at, and essentially exactly like this page. So let's go back to our builder, and I'm going to go into that second page. Well, actually, first we're going to apply the background image to the page. Just check my notes here. So, okay, just let me show you theme customization first. So in theme customization, I should have a few extra images in here. Yes. So at the bottom here, we've added these images in the same way that you add in the menu images that we did previously. So these are added into background image 1 and background image 2. So we're going to take the class from background image 1, we'll just copy that, and I'll just cancel out of this. And if I go on to the little cog on the second page, and we'll edit this, and we'll add in background image 1. And yeah, okay. And I'll save that. And if I preview this, again, this will take a little second or so to preview. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, so we've actually added in that image now to the full page. And you can see as we scroll all the way down, you can see that that image is there and already starting to make the lift on the page and make it feel a little bit more engaging. So if I go back into the builder and go into the page itself, I'm going to sort of move down through each of these articles and just add in some classes that I want to add in that will basically add some extra background colors and different images to the background. So the second one that I'm going to add in is background default color, and this is going to be on the second article. So it's background color default, and I'll just save that. And I'll just go into theme customization just to quickly show you what that is. So you also have the option to choose a few background colors, for each of your pages or different places. You can define them here, and you can call the classes in particular articles or components as you need them. So one of the ones that we've already assigned is the background color default, and we've assigned to this sort of nice creamy color, and we've then applied that to the second article on the page that we're on the style. So if I again preview this, I'm going to my second page, you can see now that it's starting to look a bit more like our original page where we now have our large background image, and we've applied the default background color to the second article. Okay, so that's another way that obviously you can define the different colors that you want to call here, but in this case we thought that the default color worked best. So the final step that I'm going to take is to bring in our little effect of the dots on this last component. And if I just move back into the builder, and I'll scroll down here to our last three components here, you'll see that the component that we want to have the dots behind is a reveal component. And if I jump into the builder here, you'll see here is the reveal component here. But we've also actually added an article above and an article below, and we've added into each of those a blank component. And all that really does is will allow us to create some space above and below this article, which will help sort of sell that dot effect a little bit better. So if I go into the background, the edit of this article, I'll add into it background image 2, and I'll save that, and we'll preview this. Okay, so again, we'll jump back into our new page, and again, as we move down now, you'll see that this is applied the little dot pattern. And the reason of it, just to clarify the reason why that happened, if I go back into theme customization and we look at the actual images that we have uploaded. So we have our original background page image, and then the image with the dots, which we've applied to that particular article, the article with the reveal. They're essentially the same image, but one just has a slightly different pattern over the top. And that, combined with the blank article that we placed above and the blank article that we placed below, gives us this little, effect where we can see the background image and then the dots roll over. And then as we move further down, the dots move away. So that's our page, basically styled and themed, and we've only really used 2 images and 1 color. So it's pretty simple, and I think that if you scroll down through the page, it gets a lot more engaging than it did originally. The last thing that I want to show you before I hand over to Mary is just I want to talk a little bit about some of the extensions that are available in your courses that maybe some people don't know too much about or don't really use that much. So there's one that we've developed recently for our financial services suite, and we have also rolled that out, this particular extension, to everybody, so everybody should have this available to use, which is page footer navigation. And what this does is that we just add it and OK it. What this does is this gives us the ability to add a little link at the bottom of each page as the user at the bottom of the page, which will then allow them to navigate to the next section, which I'll show you in a second. It'll make a little bit more sense. So you can see we've added it on here. It's now in page footer navigation. Go back to the menu and go to project settings. You can see that here, project settings, it's also been added to the project. And if I check this, we have a few settings that we can set on this, like the button titles, home, previous, and next. But also what we want to do is just change the display options for this to scroll to bottom. And I'll save that, and we'll preview this. So this will take a little bit longer. So as I say, what this will do, page footer navigation gives you extra control at the bottom of your page, or the user extra control at the bottom of your page to be able to navigate to the next section, next page in the course, or the previous page in the course, or go back home. So often where a lot of people are creating courses, they would put some type of messaging at the bottom of the page to ask the user to go back up and click on the home button and then go back into the menu and choose the next page. Here, with this enabled, with the page footer navigation enabled, they can just select the next page right from the bottom of their current page, and it takes them to the next one. So that's kind of everything from me at the minute. So I'm going to hand over to Mary, and she's going to take you through some best practice for creating pages and what to keep in mind and do's and don'ts. Thank you.
That's great, Paul. Thank you. So don't forget, guys, to keep your questions coming in. We have had a flood in so far. We'll do our best time-wise to answer as many as we can live on today's session. So just on the right-hand side of your control panel towards the bottom, you'll see that questions box. Pop them in there. Thank you. It's all yours, Mary.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a good day. My name is Mary. I'm a graphic designer at Learnpool. And today I'm going to speak to you about what to consider when creating your ADAPT courses. So Paul has shown you some fantastic techniques on optimizing your images and creating really interesting background effects. But you may ask yourself, why is this important? Well, we believe that it isn't purely aesthetic. That your design choices are also very important in the functionality of the course. The design choices you make will assist in the learning process by creating visually engaging content. So when considering your layouts, you can think how everything is going to fit together in harmony. So I'm going to talk you through a course that I've created. The first page is going to be just looking at various components and the design processes and decisions that I made when creating that page. And then the second page is just going to be an overview, just some do's and don'ts of graphic design, a beginner's guide basically. So I'm going to start off by going into the component section. Oh, sorry about this. Okay. So in the first articles of this page are text components. Here you can choose between a full width text component or a half width text component. Sorry, there's a technical problem here. So here the background image is very effective, so there is no need to add any other image. When you have a background image, you don't feel you need to add a graphic component into every article. So basically this will reduce the amount of images overall in the course, which means less images for you to source, but it still looks great. However, if you do decide to use a graphic component, try to use it maybe on a block color or a simple background to give it hierarchy. The next component to look at are narrative components. Here the same principles apply. Try to choose a background image that gives you good contrast between the background and the foreground assets. It's also good practice to keep the text length consistent to avoid having to move up and down the page to navigate through the sections. As you see here, if the text is too long, I have to navigate down and back up. So it is better just to keep it nice and consistent. The next components are reveal components. Again, there are two types to choose from, a full width or a half width components. Which you choose will depend on which image you would like to use or how much text you want to display. Sorry, there's a problem here. This keeps jumping up. For instance, the full width component, you can see a large amount of text, but if you use that in the half width component, it will get cut off. So similarly, so in the half width component, if you use a smaller amount of text in the larger component, there'll be a lot of empty space. So it's just up to you to decide which you think looks best with the amount of text that you have. Using too much text in reveals isn't best practice. It's better for the learner to have smaller, digestible chunks of text. So now I will look at some ideas for hot graphic components. In our first example, the learner clicks on a pin of one of the individual icons. This is a very orderly hot graphic. The learner knows exactly where to click and in what sequence. 1, 2, 3, whoops, 4. However, you may want to use a photograph or a less orderly hot graphic. Here the sequence is less obvious. This requires the learner to find the pins within the image to complete the section. So it may not be 1, 2, 3, 4 exactly. You may have to search around the image to find exactly where all the pins are. Another option for hot graphics, or any asset for that matter, is to use typography, for example, words or numbers. This is a good option if it's a difficult subject to find an image for. If there are a lot of pins in a hot graphic, you can set up the pagination so you can navigate continuously through the sections like so, rather than clicking in and out of each asset like we did with the photographic hot graphic. Now we will go to, sorry about this, I'm not sure if this is showing up on your screen. There seems to be a little technical problem here. So now I'm going to show you some design tips to keep in mind when creating your own courses. The first step is to define who your audience is and then choose a style that is suitable for them. For instance, is it a professional audience like the financial sector, or a more, sorry, this pop-up box is popping up every time I move through, pardon me, or is it a more informal subject like, or an informal audience like students? Is it a sensitive subject like end-of-life care, or a more fun subject like using social media? These questions and how you answer them should affect the types of images and colours you decide to use within the course. The next step is to choose an appropriate style. For example, are you going to use photographs or illustrations? Photography is good for showing realism. It is also good for showing personality and emotion, especially if you use portraits of people. Illustration is good for creating characters or situations that it would be hard to find photographs for. It's also good for showing information such as graphs or charts. What you use will depend on the tone of voice of the course and what type of information you want to present. I personally try to use a mixture of both, as I think it adds a nice dynamic to the course. Whatever style you decide to go with, use good quality images. Sorry, now there's a small problem here. I'm just going to. Where was I? No, sorry about that. So whatever style you decide to go with, use good quality images. Paul has demonstrated to you how to prepare images online for your course. So any pixelated images or stretched images should be avoided because it will really affect the credibility of the course if the images are bad. So typefaces are the next thing to consider. You should always avoid using too many typefaces. The general rule of design is 1 to 2 per design. Typefaces have personalities, so you need to pick one that is suitable for the tone or voice of the subject matter. If in doubt, use a nice, clean, legible typeface like Helvetica or Open Sans rather than a more stylized ones. Also, it's very important to make sure that your text is clearly legible, that it is not too small to read or on a busy background. The next consideration is your colour scheme. Like typefaces, colour schemes also have personalities. Colour can attract attention, change your mood, and it plays a major role in how we see or define things. So the colour choices you make, again, should fit in with the tone of voice. I've given you some examples here of some colour meanings, and they should all be taken into consideration when choosing your background colours or your menu colours. There's a lot online that you can look up about color schemes. There's sites like Color Lovers, Kaleidoscope, where you can see what kind of color schemes would be nice to use. These color wheels allow us to see at a glance the different relationships of colors that produce pleasing color combinations, and also the color schemes that don't. Overall, just keep it simple. Remember, less is more, but be creative and have fun. Thanks very much for listening.
That's great, Mary. Paul, thank you very much. Some fantastic tips in there, and given the adapt learning, the wow factor is such. We have had a crazy number of questions coming in, guys, and I know that we're kind of up against it time-wise, so any questions that we don't get on to live on this morning's session, we will bring those all together in a learning document and share with all our attendees from this morning, so you can kind of get an idea what all our delegates are asking. But let's get an idea of what people are. Just bear with me a second. We have a question: what sizes of images are suitable for PC, tablet and phone, especially with the components that have options for small, medium and large images? And that's from Cliff.
Yeah, okay. So as sort of earlier on in my presentation, I was showing you some different image sizes that we use for our courses. Now, there is obviously in the builder there is options to have small, medium and large images, but generally we only use this whenever we need an image to do something different at mobile. Sort of what I mean around that, for example, is if we have, let's say, for example, an image that has maybe some text in it, and when we're using it on the desktop, it's easy enough to read. Okay. But then when we move to mobile, we might have to make that text actually larger on the image. In that case, we might use the smaller, medium versions of the image. But the way, if you optimize your images properly, like we showed you, by saving out as JPEGs and checking, the compression and getting that down low enough, then those images, properly compressed, will work fine across all screen sizes. Now, you do have to sort of, as I say, keep in mind that if you have lots of text on an image that you're using on a desktop, will that read well at a mobile? And maybe in that case, maybe use the optional sizes of images. Mm-hmm. But just optimize your images properly. Make sure as long as they're clear across those three browser sizes, then you should be fine using just the one image size. So it would be it a menu image, or be it a full width graphic image, or a half width graphic image. As I say, we use the same across all browser sizes.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine then, Paul, that's key to have that organised before you even start to commence building the e-learning. It would save you a lot of kind of heartache as you build those components and things together to have those image sizes.
Yeah, optimization, getting the size right, and optimization is the key. Mm-hmm. If you've got the size right and you stick to the guidelines that we have, then you don't need to upload individual images for different sizes of screens. Mm-hmm. Because we don't do that. We generally, it would just take us too much time if we had to create either individual images or even upload the same image 3 times. It's just, it's unnecessary.
Yeah, and that's what adapt learning is all about, by taking out the kind of pain points of having to rework and reload and making it as easy as possible for the author of the e-learning. So it comes down to sorry, go on ahead, Paul.
I think when you do look at the adapt itself, and you do see these slots for small, medium and large images, you kind of think, oh, I have to fill these spaces. But it's not.
Okay,
it's not
good. It's good news. When it comes, our question is around the reveal component. How do you get that so small? As attendee is saying, whenever they use, the graphics are so huge no matter how they work scaling them.
Yeah. So again, that's the images that you use in the reveal components will be resized to the size the component is set at. So you have, whenever you set the component or add the component to your page, you can set it at full width or half width on left and right. So if you have a small image and it's put into say a full width component, it will stretch it up to that size. Mm-hmm. So it's taking an image that's say 256 pixels wide and scaling it up so it's 1024 pixels wide. So you're going to lose a lot of quality, and it's going to look really bad. But again, if you go back to the guidelines that we've set for image sizes, for full width and half width graphic. If you stick to those and optimize, then you shouldn't have that problem at all.
Okay, great stuff.
As long as you know that you're preparing an image for a full width graphic or a half width graphic, and you get those sizes right, you should be fine.
Great, brilliant. What about asset management? We're asking here, can we remove graphics from the asset library? This person's got an image that they uploaded in error and they can't seem to remove it.
That's common. So we do the same thing as well. It happens to us. We'll upload images. Maybe we think maybe they're not the one that we want to use in the final course. There is no way of removing it at the minute. And really, the only thing that you can do at the minute is really think about how you tag your images. So the clearer that you can be with tagging those images, you'll be able to sort of recall them back again and find them again. I know that becomes more important as more images are uploaded, and although there may be a lot of ones that you don't want to use there, tagging then becomes really important because you still want to try and find those original images again amongst all the others that you have uploaded. So I would say think about your tags, and it's a key step to any course that you're building.
Yeah, good advice there. At the very beginning of your presentation, Paul, you showed like a list of resources that our delegates can use when working with their images, and I will share those as a follow-up to today's session. But someone has asked, is Tiny PNG still a good idea to use?
Yes, it is. I don't know if can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So let me just bring it up here. Tiny PNG is definitely something that you can use. This kind of helps you with the step of optimizing your images. Where I showed you how to save as a JPEG in Pixlr. You also might have an image as a PNG or a JPEG. Maybe you're not sure about what you should do in terms of quality settings. So what Tiny PNG does is sort of takes that pain out of it for you. So again, it's a free service, tinypng.com, and all you do is you load up a page, and then you can bring up, let me see if I'll take an image from here. So these are some images that I've created for courses. So I can take, let's say like a background image or let's see which one, let's take this one here, this half-width image. So I'll just drag that straight onto Tiny PNG. It'll upload the image. And it'll take PNGs or JPEGs. It'll upload the image. It'll compress it, and it'll show you how much you've actually saved in terms of file size on that.
Oh, right.
And then you can download it to your local machine, and you can use it in your ADAPT courses. Now the saving here is only 28% because this has probably already been optimized. If you uploaded an unoptimized JPEG or an unoptimized PNG, you could probably save about 70%.
Wow.
And the quality should still be pretty high, and more than usable in a course.
Fantastic. So we have another kind of more questions coming in, but like I said, we just ran out of time this morning to answer them all live, but we will answer them after today's session. Lindsey, I don't know if you've any kind of parting thoughts in terms of what we've covered today and the ADAPT learning, what the future holds for it.
I just wanted to say thank you really to Paul and Mary. I think it's really useful. As I said, I think one of the things that we have certainly found that people struggle with most is the images and kind of how to work with them, how to put them in the modules to best effect really. So I think some of the tips that we've been given today are just great and will make a big difference to people's modules. Going forward, ADAPT is ever evolving really. As I mentioned at the beginning, there is a roadmap for new components, and really if people just want to feed in, and they can do that in various ways. They can either email myself directly, or they can send stuff through to the support desk and they can forward it on for me. But anything that you're finding frustrating or that you would like to see within ADAPT, then just let us know. Obviously, there's a lot of work still to be done. I mean, but we'll kind of work our way through and prioritise as we see fit really, and we talk to people at all our events. So if you're at Learning Pool Live as well and you've got anything in particular to mention to us, then just come and find us. Great stuff. So that's it, folks. Before we wrap up, there's a few things I want to make you aware of. A link to a recording of this webinar and any accompanying resources will be hitting your inbox as a follow-up to this. Feel free to share amongst your team and your colleagues. And once the webinar closes, there will be a short survey that will pop up. I'd love for you to give me your feedback and help me shape future webinars in terms of people's appetite when it comes to learning and learning technologies.
And as Lindsay's mentioned, don't forget about our flagship conference, Learn and Pull Live, which is happening on the 15th of October in London. I see that some of you online this morning have already booked your places already, and I'll include some information around us in the follow-up note. So all that remains is to thank you on behalf of Lindsay, Paul, Mary and myself for joining us online, and we look forward to seeing you at future learning hours.